I'm Aaron Sagers, and this is Talking Strange. Hey there, spooky nerds. Welcome back to Talking Strange, the paranormal pop culture show. I'm Aaron Sagers, and I'm super excited about my guest today. He's Bryan Fuller, the mastermind behind the brilliant TV series Hannibal, the very lovely and fantastic Pushing Daisies. He's also a spooky nerd. He's into the weird, the strange, the unusual. And his new film, Dust Bunny, which opens in theaters December 12th, is just such a gorgeous, fantastical, wickedly inventive feature. And it's also his feature directorial debut. And in the film, a 10-year-old little girl joins forces with a hitman who is her neighbor to confront each other's monsters. The girl, whose name is Aurora, played amazingly by newcomer Sophie Sloan, has the mysterious neighbor who is played by Mads Mikkelson, who kills real-life monsters. So he's a hitman for hire. But when Aurora needs help killing the monster that she believes ate her entire family, she procures his services. Suspecting that her parents may have fallen victim to assassins gunning for him, Aurora's neighbor guiltily takes on the job. Now, to protect her, he's going to have to battle an onslaught of assassins and accept that maybe some monsters are real. The film also stars Sigourney Weaver and David Dastmalchian, friend of Talking Strange, who will also be joining us for a chat about Dust Bunny in another episode. His film, again, it's great. It's fun. It's weird. I really love it. It's like John Wick meets Amelie in terms of this hyper-realized world filled with over-the-top characters. It's so pretty to look at. The design is just really stunning. And this is a great dark fairy tale. So in the following interview, Bryan and I talk about how Dust Bunny blends fantasy, violence, and heart, and how working with Mads Mikkelson and Sigourney Weaver, how that whole process, and talks about designing the monsters through a child's imagination and why fairy tales can sometimes be more honest than horror. And yes, Bryan also shares some creepy ghost stories from his own life. So let's get to it. Here's Bryan Fuller talking about Dust Bunny.
Good to see you again.
You as well, yeah. Sorry, yesterday was like very fast. You know, that 5-minute situation,
So crazy.
churn and burn.
Yeah.
But yeah, thanks for mentioning the hat. The whole deal with that is so my job outside of this is like I do ghost shows on like Travel Channel and Netflix talking about the paranormal and researching folklore. So I am the spooky guy.
That's and I love the call with the glasses to murdering PJ Souls.
Yeah. That was like part of it, but it wasn't like the intentional core part of it. It was more like I like ghosts and I would wear glasses a lot. And then it was like, oh, of course, also Michael Myers. But which also demonstrates his sense of humor when you really think about it. This
It's
random moment,
great.
I mean, it's not related to Dust Bunny, but talk about that scene, right? Because it's kind of a weird character moment for Michael Myers.
Well, the with those serial killers, whether it was kind of the first indication of a sense of humor with which we got full bore with Freddy Krueger, of course. The humor was on full display. But the other slashers were kind of humorless, and and Michael Myers was humorless until that moment when he put on Bob's glasses and the sheet, and it all was functional, but there is a sense of wit.
Yeah, I don't really think we've seen a lot out of Michael Myers from the sense of humor standpoint since then either.
No, no, and I was a big fan of the novelizations as well when I was a
Yeah.
kid. I remember I read Halloween before I saw Halloween.
Uh, well, on to Dust Bunny. I loved it. I was fortunate, the screeners we could watch a couple times, so I already kind of watched it a few times. And I know you're a fan of Amelie, and then you mentioned it yesterday when we were chatting. I love it, and I was thinking about that with, honestly, comparisons are a dangerous thing, but like with some John Wick in there as well. Uh,
Right.
So this this world is sort of this alternate New York City in some ways. We do see a
Like a
license
fairy
plate.
tale New York.
Yeah. Also a little bit of Netherlands, maybe a lot of Asian influences. It's this alt universe. And I was curious about this world you conceived about. I know you said fairy tale and it is, but why this? What did you want to put into this blender for this setting for Dust Bunny?
Well, I think everything has to like all the boats have to rise to the aesthetic in some way and to the fairy tale of the storytelling. So that absolutely included what we were doing with locations and so much of we shot in Budapest. So there was a lot of Art Nouveau and Deco and those kinds of really aggressive aesthetic styles architecturally. And as we were looking at all of the possible locations, there were some that were much more traditional, but we saw this fantastic building that was the Hungarian Treasury. It's a bank of some sort for Hungary, and it was this gorgeous, ornate building with all of this fabulous architecture and tiling, so much more than what we put on camera because I was like, oh my God, I want to see the roof. I want to see all of this fantastic tiling on the roof and all the different architectural details. But that would have tipped it over into like, okay, you're not, that building does not exist in New York. So that started to inform a lot of things. Once we chose that location for Aurora's apartment building, it kind of informed everything, and we didn't want it to stick out. So everything else had to become a little heightened, a little more heightened, a little more stylized. And it was just sort of listening to the opportunities that we had in Budapest and also figuring out how we manage a consistency of style throughout the picture and also dealing with a story where we don't want the audience to know what's real for the first two acts of the film, and we want them to wonder, is this a little girl's overactive imagination? Is this some form of reality? Where are we in our fairy tale storytelling? And the aesthetic of the film was greatly informed by all of that.
Yeah. And when I use the John Wick comparison, I was thinking about these action sequences because I know you did some, banger action sequences with Hannibal, but there's this almost balletic style to this main fight sequence that we see. Well, we see a couple of them. Was this the most intense action sequence you've filmed, and how would you distinguish it compared to your previous kind of murder rampage fight sequences that we've seen before?
I love the battle between Mads Mikkelsen and Lawrence Fishburne at the beginning of season two of Hannibal. Like that's a favorite. And also in the middle of season three, there's another great fight between Lawrence Fishburne and Mads Mikkelsen, two guys who are very familiar with fight sequences. It's going to be hard to top anything in The Matrix and what Lawrence Fishburne did in that film. Because that was taking wire fu to a brand new level and also introducing a lot of these Eastern styles of fight choreography to Western cinema. So it was interesting with the dragon fight in Chinatown and then the shootout at the apartment. Um, I'm glad that you like them and presuming you like them.
I did.
There was something about, you know, eyes versus stomach and what we wanted to achieve and what we could achieve just in terms of being an independent movie. And so I always go like, oh, I wish we could have got that other shot and I wish we could have got this piece. But that's probably a product of my hyper criticism that is mostly directed at myself.
Yeah, Mads, as I don't know Mads personally, I love his work, and he is a great performer, but can also just convey that intensity. and the lethality, and yet here this unnamed assassin, he is those things, but he also weirdly has this kind of, almost dare I say, cuddly, borderline cuddly element to him. And what was the conversation, the development of making him this character while still being sort of the mad that audiences might expect to see, and playing with that, subverting that kind of expectation? Did he just slip right into that, or yeah, the development of
Well,
that?
I think there's something about Maz as a father and a grandfather and how much of a family man he is. And there, like those elements of warmth, even though we are, most commonly for, American audiences, we know him as villains in the Marvel worlds or the Star Wars worlds. Actually, he was one of the greatest heroes of Star Wars. It turns out he also built the thing, but there's something about our expectation of him as an audience that is hinging on his villainy and hinging on him being kind of a cold, calculating killer. That when you put him opposite a child, even though that may be the like kind of presentational self, you either intuit or he projects a kind of warmth and vulnerability where it does feel like a cheetah with a baby baboon in many regards. And he just has you lean into Mads Mikkelsen in a way that you don't always get with a lot of actors. There's always a mechanism underneath the presentational self that betrays a greater depth than what the audience it may be seeing, but it's there. And I think that it's his experience. It's
Mhm.
his experience building these characters and transforming into the various worlds. So it wasn't necessarily like a plan as much as it was a trust with Maz, knowing that he, as always, with anything he does, he elevates it.
And Sophie Sloan, the the previous trust is not there. This is a new performer, and she's a young person, and she delivers as Aurora this powerhouse presence and performance, because just juxtaposed with Mad's assassin, she is weirdly a heavy. She has this, she is bossy. She has this fantastical story. She's dealing with a monster that's eating her foster parents, but she's also bossy. She's assertive, and I guess, like, between Sigourney Weaver, she's another woman in this assassin's life that's pushing him around a little bit. Um, it was just, it's really incredible to watch. Again, is this a young person that just somehow got it right away, or how did this character kind of come to be?
Sophie is such a find for us. I don't think the movie would work without Sophie. And there's something to our assumption about a child's experience that allows for uh, an uncharacteristic performance of authority. And since she's the one in the movie that has the most experience with what all the other characters are about to encounter, she is a voice of authority, but she's also I think if there is a message of the movie, it's listen to children or believe children. And there's something about her narrative that is so wild and outside of everybody else's reality that she has to take on an authority role to try to convince everybody in order to save their lives.
Yeah.
So I think that's something that she just kind of inherited as a being, like kind of came out with a certain authority of herself, and her mother will talk about that she's very clear about what she wants in her life and what she wants to achieve, and singularly in a way that is shocking with a child because of her professionalism and her dedication and her uh her being undeterred in what she wants. And it's interesting because as a new actor, and even though, like, this is her first movie, it doesn't feel like it. And I think a lot of that goes to just this force that Sophie Sloan is.
Hmm. Yeah, and not to tiptoe into spoiler territory, even though I know there's a lot of reviews and write-ups about the film up till now, but this monster design, and when we're talking about the monsters that kids see, there's another movie, not your movie. There's another movie where the monster would be full on creep out, unsettling, the dark shape, or the shape that would be in the closet or under the floorboards. But this is this very fantastical kind of creature, and I was thinking, like, why did you go in that direction? I mean, it does fit this world, but why'd you go there instead of kind of going in the darker, scarier version of what this creature could be?
Well, I think if it were a darker, scarier sort of creature, that would almost unnerve the tone of the movie, because I mean, it's rated R, but I honestly thought I was making a children's movie. So that I definitely wanted the monster to be from a child's imagination as opposed to an adult's imagination. And I think when we get to those darker, slicker, kind of Giger-esque creatures that we've seen in a lot of horror movies, that kind of would have grounded it in a total horror as opposed to a fairy tale. And it's like, I love horror movies and I love the moniker of this being called a horror movie, but it's really a fairy tale.
Yeah, yeah,
So I think part of the fairy tale is uh the delivery mechanism of the monster has to have a certain childlike origin, because that's, the narrative. So it felt like the right monster for this character. And that was one of the things that, when this was an Amazing Stories, we were talking a lot about what the monster is, where it comes from, what its purpose and resources are. And that was one of the things that Steven Spielberg hit on very early on in the development of this story, is what exactly is the relationship between the monster and the child, and how they inform each other were the things that he was very specific about wanting to nail down. So I got that extra added benefit of sort of Spielbergian moon dust to sprinkle on this. So it did feel more like an Amblin movie than a Blumhouse movie.
yeah. Um, I all the performers in this, everybody's excellent, and they also have this just great look, just this distinct look. David Dastmalchian is a buddy of mine. We've done lots of talks about being a monster kid, things like that, and of course Sigourney Weaver. And Sigourney, like, she has this moment. I knew you were already a fan of her from Ripley or from Alien, and then of course Ghostbusters. And this is a woman that has incredible range
And Working Girl.
and Working Girl, incredible range. And
Yeah, yeah.
this moment when we first meet her, she does the thing we have the stretching of the mouth, and also just her performance. It's like this is a woman that's showing up swinging for the fences. Um, was there a moment where you're like, I already knew I loved her, I already knew I respected her work, but man, she is like bringing it for this. Any anecdotes like that?
There's so many anecdotes about working with her, most of which are about her humanity and accessibility that kind of helps demystify a lot of the great achievements that she has made in cinema. So there was something really nice about, she wasn't carrying the legacy as much as she was showing up and really put the work into the script. We had a lot of meetings about the script and a lot of wonderful conversations that, became very personal as a result of talking about the script. And I felt honored to be let into some of those stories and anecdotes of her life and as it relates to the character and the piece as a whole. So, she she imbues such trust. And there were things where, like for instance, with the jaw exercise, as we were going through the script, she was like, "Oh, I've got something for that, and it'll be funny." And that's kind of all she said about it. And I wasn't, I was like, "Okay, we're going to see what it is," because if there's one thing I learned on this production, it's trust Sigourney Weaver.
Hmm. Well, just finally, we touched on this yesterday, but I am curious before we wrap about you've dealt so much with the supernatural and the paranormal. Obviously, I'm into this stuff. So I guess a two-parter. Do you believe in ghosts, monsters, the supernatural? Have you had an experience along those lines that you can share?
I've definitely had experiences with ghosts. And that's a big umbrella under which,
Oh yeah.
there's a lot to describe. One of my favorite experiences, there's a couple that like really stand out where I remember at the time trying to rationalize it through like, okay, what else could this be in this situation? And I used to live when I was in college at this magnificent old craftsman house in Los Angeles in the Crenshaw district. And and it was like a bunch of students had the different bedrooms and uh there was an incident where I was going into the bathroom, or I was coming out of the bathroom, and I'd just taken a bath, and I had my, bathrobe on, etc. And I opened up the door, and there was an older woman standing right outside the door. And when I opened it, she looked up at me, uh, as surprised to see me as I was surprised to see her, but she wasn't physical. It was as if it were the after image of a flash bulb, kind of staining your retinas. And so it was this kind of flash bulb moment of a person standing out there. And it seemed more science fiction than supernatural, or just science, because it felt as though uh, because we were both surprised to see each other, that almost time had sort of touched in a way, from different points. And she was seeing me. Maybe there was a glitch in the matrix or some sort of hologram malfunction, but it felt more like 2 points in time that were not linearly next to each other had touched each other and created this moment where we saw each other. And I was like, okay, that happened. And I saw it and perceived it. And that was sort of like the most definitive of seeing something where I was like, okay, like I know that happened. I wasn't high. There wasn't, there weren't any other rationalizations. And I've had other things of that, waking up in the middle of the night and seeing people around my bed, that where I was like, okay, is that a sleep paralysis kind of situation? Am I still, is part of my brain still asleep? Still, haunting and magical in their own ways. But the incident outside the bathroom, I was like, I was wide awake and cognizant enough to know that what I experienced was what I experienced. And there were no other kind of influences to alter my reality. And I was like, okay, like something happened.
Love it, love it, love it. I got a rap man, but I'll say like what you're talking about, this idea of ghosts and my kind of experience in research. It's an umbrella term. There's a lot that fits underneath the notion, and sometimes it's more sci-fi than paranormal. But I travel all around the world, being the Queen Mary doing a talk.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, so if you ever want to do ghosty stuff, you let me know.
Well, Dave and I should come down and visit you at the Queen Mary.
You most certainly should. I'll let him know. I know we've been meaning to get out to the Magic Castle together as well. So I would absolutely love that. I know we're out of time. Again, Dust Bunny, I just really enjoyed it. Thank you so much for making
Thank you,
this
Aaron.
film. It was a blast. And thanks for having the chat.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Brad. Talk to you later. Bye.
Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.
And that was writer-director Bryan Fuller talking about his feature film directorial debut, Dust Bunny, which is an excellent dark fairy tale. Reminded me of John Wick meets Amelie. I think you'll agree. Let me know if you check it out. I've already seen it a couple times. I'm going to watch it again. Yeah, let me know what you think about it when it opens on December 12th. And keep an eye out for my follow-up interview with David Dastmalchian talking about Dust Bunny. We also have some more coming up from David. And Bryan mentioned a couple times, I spoke to him twice, spoke to him for another outlet, Movie Web, as well as for the Talking Strange podcast. And he had mentioned a couple times he liked my hat, which was very complimentary. So if you like my spooky nerd hat that Bryan mentioned, my Spectre with spectacles, you can pick it up at spookynerdshop.com. All right, that's it for me for this episode of Talking Strange. I'm Aaron Sagers. Until next time, be kind, stay spooky, and keep it weird.